Welcome to the fifth and final of 5 mini lectures on Shakespeare's tragedy, Macbeth. In this mini lecture, we'll be working through the many short scenes that consist of Act 5 of the play and bring the story, to its conclusion. All right, Act 5, Scene 1 is often called the sleepwalking scene. This is Lady Macbeth's final time on stage, and I've talked in earlier mini lectures about how she starts the play as the force behind Macbeth's ambition. She's the one who pushes him to murder Duncan and toward fulfilling the prophecy that he would be king that the witches started back in Act 1. And I've talked about how, though, that changes as the play progresses and she starts to collapse underneath the guilt that she feels, where Macbeth becomes more and more determined. Here in Act 5, Scene 1, we see Lady Macbeth, her collapse completes itself in this sleepwalking scene. So it starts off, we've got a doctor and a gentlewoman, and they are about to witness her sleepwalking scene. And the gentlewoman has reported to him, every night she wakes up and she goes through this ritual and she says, I need a witness to see it as well. So let's go ahead and Act 5, Scene 1, line 25. Follow along with me if you're not already. And let's go through what Lady Macbeth says aloud while she's sleepwalking. She starts off, yet here's a spot. And she's looking at her hand and she sees this and she's seeing blood. Here is more blood. And then jumping down to line 28, she's trying to wash the blood away. So there's usually in this scene, when it's done on stage, there's some sort of a basin, a wash tub, and she's washing her hands, scrubbing, trying to get the blood out. She says, out, damn spot, out, I say. 1, 2, well, then 'tis time to do it. She's hearing the clock turning. And what she's going to do through this whole sleepwalking scene is walk us back through the entire play and the murders that they've committed and the treachery that her and Macbeth have gone through in order to get to their position now. 1, 2, why then 'tis time to do it. Hell is murky. Fie, my lord, fie, a soldier in a field. So these are, each one of these is a reference back to an earlier moment in the play. What need we fear who knows it, when none can call our power to account? Yet who would have thought the old man to have had so much blood in him? So here where she went back and saw Duncan after he was murdered. She never said this at the time, but it moved her, it traumatized her, seeing this dead body. And remember the earlier line too, she had said, if he had not looked like my father, I had done it. She has legitimate remorse at this point for her part in the murder. Line 34, she talks then about the murder of Macduff's family. She says, the Thane of Fife had a wife. Where is she now? What? Will these hands ne'er be clean? And she's scrubbing again at her hands. No more of that, my lord, no more of that. You mar all with this starting. And it's going back to her lines she said previously in the play when she tried to calm Macbeth, like at the banquet, for example. Calm down, calm down. Line 40. She can smell the blood on her hands. Remember, this is a dream. She's sleepwalking, and in her dream, she smells the blood. Here's the smell of blood still. All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand. Oh. And that's a nice example of hyperbole. We heard Macbeth say earlier, the whole ocean could not make my hands clean from the blood. Now she's saying all the perfume of Arabia, all the best perfumes could not make this smell of blood go from my hand. It's here. It's also an example, too, I'll point out line 41, those O. When we see that, it's not actually just O. That's called ecophonesis. Ecophonesis in Shakespeare is when Shakespeare is telling us that the actor has free rein to make the appropriate sound that they need to make in that moment. So sometimes, literally it might be an O, and often when we're reading aloud, we just stick O in. But the actor or actress playing Lady Macbeth here has some free rein here in what kind of a moan or a sigh or a scream she might let out at that point. Again, another avenue where Shakespeare gives his directors, his actors, his actresses some creative room to make the part their own. Jumping down to line 49. And in between keep in mind the parts I'm skipping over is the doctor and the gentlewoman having their conversation as they note what Lady Macbeth's doing, and importantly also note what are they going to do about this, because she's confessing everything in her sleep. Line 49, wash your hands. Put on your nightgown. Look not so pale. Remember, that's what she said to Macbeth the night before. Not the exact lines, but this idea of don't, put on, don't look like the serpent. Be the innocent flower for right now. Look innocent. I tell you yet again, Banquo's buried. Going now to the banquet scene when she tried to calm him. So we can see all these scenes sort of flashing before her. Through what she's saying, and we can imagine her dream, her nightmare that she's having every night as she goes through this again. I tell you yet again, Banquo's buried. He cannot come out on his grave. Of course, he did, at least for Macbeth. In the banquet scene, we saw him come out of his grave. And then finally, line 53, her last line of the play. This will be the last time we see Lady Macbeth on stage, the last time we hear her. To bed, to bed. There's knocking at the gate. Come, 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 give me your hand. What's done cannot be undone. To bed, to bed, to bed. And that was, of course, what she did at the back in Act 2, when after the murder, and she said, we have to get to bed, we have to pretend we're asleep. And remember that there's knocking at the gate. You'll remember the porter scene and the knocking at the gate. That was Macduff coming just before he discovered Duncan's dead body. Now, Act 5, Scene 2, and the rest of the scenes now from here to the end of the play are these short little scenes of battle. And they alternate between what's going on inside of the castle, inside of Dunsinane Castle, and Macbeth and his cronies. And then on the outside, we've got Malcolm and Seward and the English forces. And we're going to keep jumping back and forth between these short little scenes as we see sort of what's happening on each side until they collide at the very end of Act 5. So Act 5, Scene 2, we meet two minor characters. They're new to us. And really, they're just sort of giving information. We meet Menteith and Angus. We also meet Caithness, Lennox. These are soldiers getting ready to join up with Malcolm and join him in the battle, the upcoming battle against Macbeth. Menteith starts Act 5, Scene 2. Follow along with me if you're not already. The English power is near, my lord, led on by Malcolm, his uncle Seward, and the good Macduff. So we've got these three, and Menteith and his guys are going to join with them. Revenge is burn in them, for their dear causes would to the bleeding and the grim alarm excite the mortified man. And Angus answers him, saying, near Birnam Wood shall we well meet them. That way they are coming. So we're going to meet them at Birnam Wood. Birnam Wood should sound familiar to you. Remember, in Act 4, it's Birnam Wood, according to the prophecy, that itself must rise up and take on Macbeth before he can be defeated. So Birnam Wood, keep that in mind. It's going to be important here in just a moment. Angus then has it's a really nice line as he sort of sums up the situation against Macbeth. Line 16. Now does he feel his secret murder sticking on his hands. The secret murders, like the secret murders of Lady Macduff and her family, Macduff's family, the secret murder of Banquo, the secret murder of Duncan the king. Now does he feel his secret murder sticking on his hands. Now minutely revolts upbraid his faith breach. Those he commands move only in command, nothing in love. So the ones who are still following Macbeth aren't doing it because they love him, but out of fear. Now does, and this is a great, great line, a beautiful metaphor, now does he feel his title hang loose about him, like a giant's robe upon a dwarfish thief. And that symbol is quite beautiful, this idea of a little dwarfish thief, and he's stolen a giant's robe and wrapped it around himself, and now he's sort of smothered in it. That's Macbeth, too. He's smothered in this kingly robe, this crown that he wears that doesn't belong to him, and now he can feel it smothering him. Beautiful, beautiful piece of writing by Shakespeare there. Act 5, Scene 3, we move back into the castle, and we see Macbeth, and he is steadfast in his resolve at this point. Again, he switched places with Lady Macbeth. Lady Macbeth is cracking, and whereas before Macbeth was cracking, he was uncertain, he is absolutely certain of fighting, and he will win this war, at least partially because he's been to the witches. He's heard those three apparitions. He's confident that he can overcome this battle that's about to happen. He says, Act 5, Scene 3, Line 1, follow along. Bring me no more reports. Let them fly all, till Burnham Wood remove to Dunsinane, I cannot taint with fear. So till those woods actually uproot themselves and those trees walk and fight, I don't have anything to fear. What's the boy Malcolm? Was he not born of woman? I don't have to be afraid of any man who's born of a woman, any person who's born of a woman, I don't have to be afraid of. The spirits. The spirits that know all mortal consequences, so talking about those apparitions, the spirits that know all mortal consequences, have pronounced me thus: Fear not, Macbeth. No man that's born of woman shall ever have power upon thee. Then fly, false fanes, and mingle with the English epicures. The mind I sway by and the heart I bear shall never sag with doubt nor shake with fear. So he is steadfast. He is resolved. He will win this battle. He knows he's got the apparition's prophecy on his side. He is not afraid, even if other people are. He's not afraid. I want to also talk about Act 5, Scene 3. We have another interesting minor character named Seyton, Seyton. I've mentioned him in a previous mini lecture, although this is actually the first time we see him. And Seyton is an interesting character, especially because his name and what it sounds like on stage. So it's Seyton, but that sounds an awful lot like when Macbeth calls him, and he calls for him. He says his name 3 times here in this next passage. Sounds a lot like Satan. Like he's calling on Satan in the same way he called on these apparitions, these witches. He definitely is dealing in some pretty dark forces here. And when he says Satan on stage, it's an interesting connection to the sound of the name as much as the actual name. He says, line 19, Satan, I am sick at heart when I behold... Satan, I say, this push will cheer me ever or deceit me now. I have lived long enough. My way of life has fallen into the sear, the yellow leaf, and that which should accompany old age is honor, love, obedience, troops of friends, I must not look to have. These things that normal people get in their old life, honor, love, obedience, lots of friends, I'm not going to have any of that. But in their stead, curses, not loud, but deep, mouth honor, breath which the poor heart would fain deny and dare not. Satan! And he calls again for Satan for the 3rd time. It's interesting because what was said in the previous scene is even Macbeth acknowledges it. The followers I have aren't following me out of love or loyalty. They're following me out of fear. And even Macbeth knows that at this point. Seyton enters and he has this conversation with Seyton. There's a lot of things to do with Seyton. He's a minor character, but I think he's worth thinking about for a director. And I mentioned earlier in a previous mini lecture that Seyton would be a character who might perhaps be the 3rd murderer. That's one way to play with this character. All right, we'll see Seyton again in some later scenes. He helps Macbeth get his armor on here in a few minutes. But first, the doctor enters. Remember, we saw the doctor in the last scene. He witnessed Lady Macbeth and her sleepwalking. And he says to him in line 38, how does your patient, doctor? How is Lady Macbeth doing? The doctor says, not so sick, my lord, as she is troubled with thick coming fancies that keep her from her rest. Macbeth says, okay, cure her of that. Do your doctorly thing. Cure her of whatever's troubling her. Canst thou not minister to a mind diseased? Pluck from the memory a rooted sorrow, raise out the written troubles of the brain? Can't you just, if she's got bad memories, do some medicine and pull them out? If she's got some sort of troubles, give her something that will fix it. And with some sweet, oblivious antidote, cleanse the stuffed bosom of that perilous stuff which weighs upon the heart. The doctor says, there's not medicine for that. Therein the patient must minister to himself. I can't do that. That has to be done by the patient herself or himself. And Macbeth is just, he's irritated. He's frustrated. He doesn't have an answer. Throw physic to the dogs. All none of it. Fine. Medicine. Physic means medicine. Throw medicine to the dogs. All none of it. Act 5, Scene 4. We jump back, and now we've got the army outside of the castle again. And at this point, those guys we saw earlier in Act 5, Scene 2 have joined up with Malcolm, with Seward, with Macduff, and we've got the whole army together standing in front of Burnham Wood. And remember, this is the woods, the forest that surrounds the castle. Seward says, and this is important because now you're going to start to see exactly what those apparitions, what their prophecies really meant, and the double meaning in them. Seward says, "What wood is this before us?" Right at the beginning, line 4. Menteith answers this, "The wood of Burnham." And listen closely to Malcolm's instructions to the soldiers. "Let every soldier hew him down a bow and bear it before him. So cut down a big branch and carry it in front of you. Thereby shall we shadow the numbers of our hosts and make discovery ere in report of us." So we're going to trick them into thinking there's less of us than there actually are. We're going to hide our numbers by hiding behind branches of the forest. The soldiers answer, "It shall be done," and they immediately go to cutting down Burnham wood, the right size trees, just enough, one in front of each soldier, that he can then carry and use to hide himself. When Macbeth sees this in a moment, when a messenger sees and reports to him, Macbeth is going to start to see that those apparitions, they weren't lying to him. They were telling him the absolute truth. Well, I suppose absolute's a bit of an overstatement. They were telling him the truth, but it has a double meaning. And so when we said Burnham Wood was marching toward him, that prophecy is suddenly coming true. The wood indeed is marching toward him. Act 5, Scene 5, we've got Macbeth back in his castle. So I said these scenes alternate back and forth. Very fast-paced, quick scenes. Most of them just, definitely less than 100 lines. Act 4, Scene 4, only 20-some lines. Very short, little, quick-paced scenes. Macbeth is with Seaton now. He says, "Hang out our banners on the outward walls. The cry is still they come. Our castle's strength will laugh a siege to scorn. Here let them lie till famine and the ague eat them up. Our castle can withstand any siege. Were they not forced with those that should be ours, and might not have met them dareful beard to beard, and beat them backward home? What is that noise?" And suddenly at that point, as he's going on and on about how brave he is, how powerful his castle is, what is that noise? There's a cry within. And most editors will have a note, "A woman cries within." And Seaton answers. He says, "It is the cry of women, my lord." So there's women making this wailing sound inside. And Macbeth has an interesting point, and this goes back to his change, his flip-flop, where before he had sort of emotions, he hesitated, he was thoughtful. Now he's just all warrior mode. Line 10, he says, "I have almost forgot the taste of fears. The time has been my senses would have cooled to hear a night shriek. In the past, my old self, if I would have heard a woman let out a scream like this, I would have paused, I would have thought about it, but now it's my senses are cooled. It doesn't even faze me that there's a scream coming from inside." Seaton goes off to find out why the women screamed, what happened, what that scream was about. And in line 15, Macbeth, when he returns, asks him, "Wherefore was that cry?" And remember, wherefore means why. Why was that cry? Why that sound? And Seaton answers, "The queen, my lord, is dead." Lady Macbeth is dead. She's committed suicide here. She's killed herself. Usually that happens off stage. Usually we don't see that, although some directors might choose to put it on stage and let us see it. It just depends. Room for creativity there in the part of the director of how you play that. Macbeth has his lines, and for a moment, just a moment, he slips back into being contemplative, and he has one of his most important speeches of the whole play here. He says, "She should have died hereafter. There would have been time for such a word. She should have died later. Then there would have been a moment where we could have grieved her properly, where he could have grieved her properly." And then this is the very important passage starting line 19, Act 5, Scene 5, line 19. "Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. Every single tomorrow just marches in one after another to the last syllable of recorded time." What do we have to look forward to in life? This is a very melancholy, very dark speech from Macbeth. "And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death." So some nice antithesis between tomorrow and yesterday here. So tomorrow leads us nowhere. Yesterdays are just little lights along the path to get to where we are now. Just little lights to get us toward one step closer toward death. Out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. Our lives are short, just like an actor's part on stage is short. And we're getting close to the end of the play, so that's an interesting moment here, meta-theatrically, of Macbeth saying actors get this moment. this 2 hours on a stage where they get to be sort of famous. Everyone pays attention to them. Everyone listens. And then the part's done, and they're gone, and they disappear, and they're sort of meaningless, right? After the 2 hours is done, struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It, meaning life, it is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. And then a messenger suddenly rushes in and breaks off this moment, this last moment of contemplation that Macbeth has, and he turns immediately back into just pure soldier again. Thou comest to use thy tongue, thy story quickly. Tell me, messenger, what do you have to say? And the messenger doesn't quite know how to report this, but the woods are marching toward the castle right now. And he says, line 30, Gracious my lord, I should report that which I saw, but know not how to do it. Well, say, sir. As I did stand my watch upon the hill, I looked toward Burnham, and anon methought the wood began to move. And Macbeth is just devastated. Liar and slave! He can't believe it. He doesn't want to believe it, but he realizes that third apparition who said, you are fine until Burnham Wood marches against you. Now he realizes what they meant. The wood itself is indeed marching against him, because Malcolm had all the soldiers cut down a limb or a tree, a small sapling, and they're carrying it in front of them as they march. So the appearance from the castle walls of this messenger that this guard sees is the wood itself is marching against Macbeth. Let's jump to Act 5, Scene 7. And here we're inside the castle still with Macbeth, and he's acknowledging that maybe things aren't going quite so smoothly finally. But he's still clinging to that one last prophecy, that idea that no man of woman born, no person of woman born can harm him. So he says, Act 5, Scene 7, the very beginning, they have tied me to a stake. I cannot fly, but bear-like I must fight the course. This is a reference to bear baiting, so I'm going to go off on a tangent for just a moment and explain the reference. So in Shakespeare's time, there was the theater. That was one thing you could do for fun. Another entertainment that people liked was they would, and this is quite brutal, quite cruel by our sensibilities in the 21st century, but they would tie a bear to a stake in the middle of an arena space, and then they would set loose some 6 to 8 dogs and have this fight. They would have it was bear baiting, when they would have the dogs and the bear fight, and people would gather and watch this. So when he says, I'm tied to a stake, he's comparing himself to that bear. And he, bear-like, must fight the course against these dogs, or the Malcolm and the English, and these soldiers who have come to fight with him. But he goes on, he says, yes, I must fight bear-like, but he goes on to say, what's he that was not born of woman? Such a one am I, to fear or none. How can there possibly be a person who's not born of a woman? And at this point now, the castle is breached, and young Seward comes in. And remember, we met Seward the general, but this is his son, young Seward. And he asks Macbeth when he encounters him, what is thy name? Thou wilt be afraid to hear it. No, thou callest thyself a hotter name than any is in hell. Young Seward's not afraid. Whoever you are, I'm not afraid. And he says, my name's Macbeth. The devil himself could not pronounce a title more hateful to mine ear. No, nor more fearful. And young Seward then pulls his sword and fights with him. He says, thou liest, abhorred tyrant, with my sword I'll prove the lie thou speakst. And Macbeth and him fight, and Macbeth wins. He kills young Seward. Young Seward is slain. And Macbeth looks down at his body and says, thou wast born of woman. But swords I smile at weapons laugh to scorn, brandished by man that's of woman born. So I don't have to be afraid of anyone born of a woman. You clearly were born of a woman. Act 5, Scene 8, we come to the last scene of the play. So the castle's breached, Macbeth has just killed young Seward, and now finally in the climax we see him face Macduff. Macduff against Macbeth, one-on-one, championship bout, here it is. Macduff sees him. So follow along with me while I read through their lines. Macduff says in line 4, turn, hellhound, turn. Macbeth turns and sees Macduff there. And he knows, remember that first apparition said, Macduff, beware the Thane of Fife, beware Macduff. So he knows that he needs to be careful here. And he says, of all men else have I avoided thee, but get thee back. My soul is too much charged with blood of thine already. I've killed your whole family already. Just go away. I won't kill you. I don't need to kill you as well. I don't want to fight you. Macduff isn't going to let that go. Macduff wants to fight. He wants his revenge. And Macduff, he doesn't have any speeches here. He's an opposite to Macbeth in that way. He doesn't have any words or any speeches. He says, I have no words. My voice is in my sword. Thou bloodier villain than terms can give thee out. And they fight. And again, just as he said, there's not a lot of talk here. And how you do this fight, you can have some creativity with them. But you want to let this is the fun part of the play. You get to have some sword fight on stage, make it exciting, make it good. Depending on the skill of the actors who are doing it, you definitely want to play this up. It doesn't happen instantly. You want to take a minute or two to let them really show off whatever skills they have with swords. Let them play. Macbeth does say, though, at one point, he's trying to convince him, I've won, you can't beat me. He says, thou losest labor. And he's going to reveal that, there's an apparition, there's a prophecy that says, I can't die of one to woman born. And he says it to Macduff. He says, as easy mayest thou the entrenchant air, with thy keen sword impressed, as make me bleed. You can make the air bleed just as easily as you can make me bleed. You can't do either one. He says, let fall thy blade on vulnerable crests. I bear a charmed life, which must not yield to one of woman born. And here is the moment we sort of all been waiting for. What does that actually mean? What's the double? We all kind of knew when the apparition said that, I think we figured out shortly thereafter that there was some kind of double meaning. This is the tragedy of Macbeth. It's going to end with Macbeth dying. Here Macduff finally reveals it, if you haven't figured it out already. Despair thy charm, and let the angel whom thou still hast served tell thee, Macduff was from his mother's womb untimely ripped. Macbeth was not born of woman. He wasn't born in the sense of a typical natural birth. He was ripped from his mother's womb. He was born via a C-section. So if you've been wondering the whole time, how can you not be born of woman? Well, this is it. This is it right here. So me, for example, my mother had a C-section when I was born, so I was not a woman born. You may be as well, depending on whether you were born naturally or C-section. So that's the crux of that second prophecy, that second apparition. No person of woman born, no person born naturally can harm you. But that leaves open all of us who were born via C-section, and including Macduff. And Macbeth hears it, and finally he realizes too, and he knows that he's been tricked. He knows that all those prophecies about him, they weren't what they seemed on face value. And in fact, he knows now that they really were his downfall. He says, accursed be that tongue that tells me so, for it hath cowed my better part of man. And be these juggling fiends, the three witches and their apparitions, and be these juggling fiends no more believed that palter with us in a double sense, that keep the word of promise to our ear and break it to our hope. And he says, at first he says, I'll fight not with thee, and he tries to walk away, but he can't. Him and Macduff fight, and Macduff emerges the victor. And then Macduff, and you get to have some special effects here, but the implied stage direction is clear. Macduff comes out with Macbeth's head holding his head. So the makeup crew, the props department gets to have some fun with this, and they're going to have Macbeth's head that they carry out. Macduff's final lines, closing the play just before Malcolm. He carries out the head, line 54, Hail King! And you can do this a couple ways. He could say Hail King and look up to the old dead king he's killed, or more likely he's talking to Malcolm at this point on stage, who will now be the next king. He says, Hail King, for so thou art. Behold where stands the usurper's cursed head. So he's holding it up here, or maybe he's got it on an axe. Somehow they've got the head. The time is free. I see thee compassed with thy kingdom's pearl, that speak my salutation in their minds, whose voices I desire aloud with mine. Hail, King of Scotland. And they referring to Malcolm. And Malcolm is indeed to be the next King of Scotland, and that's how the play leaves us. Line 60, everyone says, All hail, King of Scotland. And the very last two lines of the play, line 75 and 76, Malcolm acknowledges that he will be the next king. He says, So thanks to all at once, and to each one whom we invite to see us crowned at Scone. So he's going to go and be coronated at Scone. And so ends the play, and so ends our study of Shakespeare's tragedy, Macbeth. I hope you've enjoyed listening to these mini lectures as much as I've enjoyed making them for you. Thank you.